Hi, everybody. I'll give you a moment to connect to sound. Hello. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1246th New Social Environment. I'm Chloe Stagaman, Director of Programs here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Olivia van Kuiken, Ginevra de Blasio, and Sedrick Chisom. And now I'll introduce today's guest and hosts. Olivia van Kuiken is a New York-based artist. She received a BFA in studio art from the Cooper Union. Solo exhibitions include Losing, Looking, Leaving at Caprii, Düsseldorf, Beil Lieb at Shatto, Los Angeles, Make Me Mulch at Chapter in New York, She Clock, Me Clock, We Clock at Kings Leap, New York. Our hosts today, Sedrick Chisom, lives and works in London. He received a full scholarship to study at Cooper Union, where he completed his BFA in 2016 and was awarded the Jacques and Natasha Gelman Foundation Award for Exceptional Ability. In 2018, he received his MFA from the Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers. And our co-host today, Ginevra de Blasio, is a writer and curator from Rome, now based in New York, and a contributor to the Brooklyn Rail. She graduated with a BA in Art History and Visual Culture from the University of Exeter and an MA in Visual Arts Administration from NYU. She's had work experiences at the Drawing Center, Performa, Fondazione Corsini, 99 Canal, and Paula Cooper Gallery, and currently she serves as a research assistant to Adam Weinberg, Director Emeritus of the Whitney Museum. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Ginevra to get us started.
Thank you so much, Chloe, and thank you for the Rail for organizing this. I'm very thrilled to be speaking to Olivia and my dear friend Sedrick, who's also an extraordinary painter. And I just wanted to start by saying that this is not a random pairing because Liv and Sedrick are very close friends. And over the past year, I had the opportunity and luck to be finding myself in the middle of really beautiful and rich conversations between them, between us, about painting, about language, about what it means to make images right now. And so I thought that these exchanges were like so interesting and thought-provoking that had to be, presented to the public. And with Liv's opportunity with this moment of about her exhibition at Matthew Brown in Tribeca was the perfect way to, start. So I wanted to start with a question really about the most striking element in the show, which really is, let's say, the installation, as you find yourself in this room with many freestanding works, and they're scattered through the space in this almost like labyrinth layout. And so the viewer is really invited to kind of like navigate through them like physically. And in the front, you see these images that are very rich in movement, color, they're layered, energetic, and figurative. However, on the return, when you leave the show, you meet almost a completely different vision, which is something that is very similar, if not a real like color field. And so I was wondering, Liv, if you wanted to speak about this duality, what brought you to this choice, to this contrast, and what shaped your decision to hang and present these works in such a way?
Um, First of all, thank everyone for being here, and thank you to the Brooklyn Rail for hosting this talk, and Ginevra and Sedrick, thank you for your thoughtful questions. Yeah, I mean, I think that the double-sided idea was kind of the crux of the show. I feel like I've weirdly always been a little obsessed with this idea of a double-sided painting. My favorite painting of all time is this painting that's in the Met. It's a double-sided processional banner, and it had been cut in half by an owner in the late 1800s, and the head of Jesus was sold to the collection that became the Louvre, and then the Mary Magdalene side was sold to the collection that became the Met. And then in the 90s, when they discovered this, they printed out a picture of the head of Jesus and glued it onto the painting. the original painting. And I'm just like obsessed with this weird, I don't know, there's something like I've been obsessed with for a really long time, this like marriage of two sides and whether they conflict with each other or come together and kind of that tension. And I think I've always really been interested in the idea of the painting as an object rather than as this screen or this window that you like look into. This idea that a painting implies this beyond space or it can be attached to the world around it is really important to me. Um, it's funny because I remember an old teacher I had once was talking about Cooper students, and he was saying Cooper students never want to focus on the work in front of them. They always want to talk about the work's relationship to the floor and the corner and whatever. And I was like, yeah, I do. Like that is like I am really invested in the not just the painting, but its relationship to everything around it. And I think so the beginning of the show, this idea for the double-sided kind of came from my interest in minimalism and how it is invested in this idea of purity, purity of experience, purity of color, purity, just this like implied purity, or it's kind of wishing to get to this like purity in almost like a spiritual sense and a phenomenological sense. But I'm as much as I'm invested in that, I'm also critical of it because I'm like, there is no such thing as pure experience. Like when you are experiencing anything, it is in the world, and the world is inherently a non-pure place. Or like, is purity rather than this idea of like nothing or just red? Maybe purity is actually maybe like right now I am having a pure experience. And so that kind of the tension between minimalism and maximalism, the tension between the idea of purity versus the reality of like and messiness of actual experience. And so I kind of wanted to make an installation that spoke to that duality. And I really wanted, I mean, I wanted to make an installation where you were like, something I was very surprised by when we installed the show was what it did. I've been thinking the whole time about the back and forth, but I hadn't really been thinking about how much they do affect your body being in the space. Like when you are in the space, you really feel like you're in like a forest or a city, or you're in this like
Hmm.
new space that feels really different, which is so exciting to me. So yeah, I would say that the backs double-sided idea kind of came from this like these ideas around minimalism and postmodern contemporary painting and this like critique of purity. But I think it also like when we set up the installation, it kind of became all these other things.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny, Ginevra. I thought that that was my first thought too, and I thought that the question around the installation strategy, like it's really striking. Not just that they stand up, but that the paintings stand up, but it's I think and I haven't physically been there, but to the show, but the what looks like is happening is that the paintings involve you the moment you actually like situate yourself around them, and you can kind of see the way that you're contributing or participating in the imagination of the painting space, and the way that the painting space is also thrown into your space. Just lingering on that last slide with like the kind of like unified color field going on. Now, I guess what I was going to ask is, I feel like like that sense of interruption or this sense of like distance or alienation or like a glitch or an aberration or something is always like a thread in and many of the works you make live. And I guess I wanted you to kind of speak to that. Like I feel like my first impulse is never to like interpret the work. I feel that my understanding of the practice is that things are not given in a straightforward manner, and that feels kind of like felt and intuitive, but it almost feels like the work is about this kind of like distance.
Right. Yeah, I think there's definitely a baked in sense of alienation that I try to build into the works, and that they don't give you easy answers. I mean, the idea of like having these paintings with text in them, like the Baroque or the bastard rhyme painting, is kind of this, it's like a red herring in that
Hmm.
when you see the painting, you immediately want to focus on the text, but the text actually doesn't necessarily lead you to a direct answer. And so I feel like the paintings are a lot about this kind of like bait and switch, in that also in the sense that they're all figurative paintings of people, but none of them are real
Hmm.
people. They're not looking at you. There's no extra diegetic gaze. I mean,
Hmm.
something I was thinking about a lot with the installation is this idea of the extra diegetic gaze, and like the idea, like the
Hmm.
ability of a painting to confront a person. And it's like, okay, that was so exciting when Manet did Olympia, but now you walk down the street and you see a picture of Kendall Jenner, the extra diegetic gaze, like looking straight in your eye all the time. So like it's not special anymore. So how do you create this sense of investment on the part of the viewer? And for me, that was thinking a lot about the positionality of the viewer as they walk around the space and like interact with the paintings, having paintings of people that sit on the floor like a person would. But I know that we've talked a lot about, your question was more about glitches. And so I think I do really want to have paintings that feel like, yeah, I think this like misdirect is really the focus of that. Having these interruptions, like you're following a thread, you're trying to place a. I mean, when I look at painting, I feel like I'm trying to place its historical references. I'm trying to place its material references. I'm trying to like think about, where where this or that artist is coming from. And so I think when I'm making paintings, I really want to like give the viewer that thread, and then like you see, the painting on the wall, like high up on the wall, the really geometric one. Um, Maybe we can go to it. Um, yeah, this one,
Hmm.
that one. And like it brings to mind, 1930s, like Italian futurism, like really kind of intense, like
Hmm.
political spiritualist work. But then the show is really not that, like you
Hmm.
have these moments that are really recalling to specific historical moments, only to then totally shift gears and you turn around and you're in a totally new place.
Hmm.
And so I think unsettling and uprooting the viewer, having them always kind of not comfortable with any specific interpretation.
Yeah, about this work actually, and connecting back to the installation, I mean, it's very interesting how you placed it, um, above all of the freestanding works. And I was noticing, like I have a deep connection with like spiritual art. So I immediately, like to me, this reads almost like an altar-like piece, almost like this image overlooking like the preachers or the figures that are the other works. Even like, the gold element in it kind of like recalls to that idea. So I was wondering, and I know that your work is not about this, but I was wondering if the effect of this is something that, you were thinking about.
Absolutely. I wanted to make a painting that felt really severe and really like, I mean, this painting comes from or is inspired by the Malevich, the original Malevich black square, which he hung high in a room in the corner, like you would hang an icon painting at the time. And it was a critique of religion in that moment. And it was a critique of the idea of an image and like what power an image holds. I think a lot. I think about it all the time, but for this show specifically, I was thinking a lot about the Malevich red square painting, which he made in response to Millet's The Gleaners. The Gleaners, for those who don't know, is a painting of all these like peasant women doing chores, like picking up stuff from the fields. And it was like this early painting that was like of non-royalty or Christian, like a non-important figure. And and Malevich is critiquing that and saying, okay, you want to help the gleaners? You want to help the gleaners? Fine. I'll make a painting. And he made a red square painting and he named it like woman, picking up thing. Like, I don't know. He named it like peasant woman doing her chore. But it was just a red square. And he's like, this is doing as much for the peasant woman as the gleaners. Like, how is this not also a peasant woman? It's a very like, this is not a pipe situation.
Mm.
But I was thinking about that, like stand-in for religion, like geometry as a stand-in for religion. But yeah, I wanted to make this like really severe, really intense, it's gold, which like I think now particularly like this idea of like gold, like I mean it's fake gold, has a very like fascistic
Mhm.
like implication to it. So I wanted to make this like really fascist painting and then have all the paintings that seem like they're under it really crazy and wild. It's another misdirect. It's like you think you're gonna walk into this show that is like that is trying to like continue the conversation of Italian futurism and all these like fascistic ideas, but actually the show hints at it, but then moves into new territory.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, I think something I think about my own work is just pathos, like the kind of drive to make something. And I guess I'm wondering because I talk to you a lot, like basically every day, and
Every day,
so I
all the
know,
time.
yeah, like way too much. But I know there's like sort of like I know there's sort of like this like obsession or fixation with severity, extremity, minimalism, abstraction on the formal level. Um, and it seems like something you're wrestling with like actively, like but then on the other end, I think you just brought up with fascism that like like there's a lot of things going on in the world, not to like speak to like the bajillion things that will come up on your phone, but like I guess I'm wondering about the drive, like what's driving this investigation on the formal level towards these severe limits, and then also what do you think you're reacting to in the world?
That's a good question. I think that I've always been really obsessed with this idea of a minimal or pure experience, this idea
Mhm.
of a non-image. I guess I started as a photographer. As a teenager, I didn't paint or draw really. I only did photography, and I thought I would go on and be a photographer. But when I was a photographer, I never really took pictures of people, of things. Like I was really looking for this liminal space, even as a teenager. And so I think I was really focused on the material itself, but then also I think I was really obsessed with this idea of having no references. Like I was very
Mhm.
much buying into the logic of minimalism. And I think in a perfect world, I would be a minimalist, or I would be making like
Mhm.
super severe empty images. But you can't make that in 2025. You can't make that because it just becomes an image of the past. I
Mhm.
can't make just like a red square. That's an image of a moment that passed. And I don't want to talk about a moment that passed. I want to talk about right now. I think what I'm reacting to a lot in the work is language and the way that language is shifting today. I feel like it's shifting faster and faster than ever before because we have the internet. And I think I'm like obsessed with how language is changing things. And I think this obsession with purity and this obsession with like minimalism and like this pure experience led to this obsession with language because language is what mediates all experience. And so I
Mhm.
became really obsessed with the mediator of the experience rather than just the experience itself. And so I think what I'm reacting to, yeah, is linguistic and how signs and symbols, represent this or that, like how we demonstrate power, how we demonstrate a class
Mhm.
or social group. It's completely being upended. But there are also things that kind of will always be there, like the gold. But also, did you
Mhm.
guys see I mean, I hate to bring it up, but like, did you guys see the Diet Prada, the gold, the like fake gold Home Depot decor in the Oval Office, like stuff like that, so on the edge of classy and tacky. Like that was something I was thinking about a lot when I was making the gold, like putting these gold leaf in the paintings, which appears a few times throughout the show. This real edge of tacky and classy and cliche and chic. I feel like that's really riding a razor's edge in 2025, like this
Mhm.
gold image. It's very 80s, which it also was back then. But yeah, so I guess that does that answer your question of what I'm responding to?
Yeah, yeah. You answered actually two extra follow-up questions. So, yeah.
Well, in terms of like you touched a bit of upon like the language and the text, and so I find extremely fascinating like the choice of the words because of like words like bastard or Baroque, they are not only visually striking, but also they're very like charged terms and loaded with meaning. And I know that
Mhm.
that's exactly what you are not trying to focus on, like the meaning and like the association of the image to the word.
Oh, but I knew they
But
would play with people.
exactly. And
Mhm.
so but it's fascinating because they're like opaque words. They have so many like different meanings and people and in different contexts. So how I wonder just like how do you go ahead and like choose those words? Like speaking of
Mhm.
titles too, like how is like your thought process?
Yeah, I definitely am thinking about rhyme schemes, alliteration, things that feel like they have the rhythm that you would want to import into a painting. Like I'm looking for phrases and words that have an aesthetic rhythm to it,
Hmm.
to them. But then I also, so for bastard rhyme, I was looking for slant rhymes. I was looking for slant
Mhm.
rhymes that I feel like, yeah, they would provoke you. They would have maybe like a tricky meaning, not controversial, but like a meaning that feels like it's poking you. But and kind of just something that's really gonna get you to be like, why? What is this? Like, what is happening here? I didn't want to choose anything too passive, I guess is the question. But then I was looking at slant rhymes, and then I found that bastard rhyme is a way of saying slant rhyme.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, that's amazing. And I thought it was great because one, the idea of a slant rhyme refers to the kind of themes within the work of these two things that feel connected, but then not quite, like they're not quite there. Like it's like a mechanism that doesn't quite click into place, is like how I look at a slant rhyme. But anyway, I think the idea of this bastard rhyme, you feel like you're branding, like it's like there's like a branding on the head, but then and like the different colors of the two words also makes them seem not related, but then they
Mhm.
actually are a single phrase. And so I was kind of looking for like all these points where the words could kind of mirror this idea of tension that's held. And then it looks for just this one point, but doesn't quite get there. And I think that that's kind of a theme throughout all the work. There's this tension where you're like, oh, these are just almost together, but then they don't quite
Mhm.
click. Kind of like the backs and the
Mhm.
fronts being so minimal, so maximal, so
Mhm.
like just all like these little things. Like I feel like that's something I'm constantly looking for in all of the images, in the like larger themes of the work, the installation. I'm looking for these moments of marriage that I know that like that doesn't totally make sense. But then Baroque, I
Mhm.
was thinking a lot. I mean, I think I'm thinking a lot about the Baroque and how I feel like we're in like a period of Baroque in that we have
Definitely.
so much language. You look at I made, I made this minimal painting in college. I made this painting that was just like a blue nothing. And I had a teacher that came in and was like, and I was like, it's nothing. It's a blue nothing. And he was like, but it's blue. Blue has all these references, all these images. And whereas in the like the 70s or something, you could say, oh, blue is nothing. And people would be like, oh, you're right, blue's nothing. But now everything is loaded up with meaning and things it's pointing to. There's a million connections, whether they're really, really like niche relationships or really broad, like obvious seeming references. They're like everything feels loaded up with stories in the same way that a snuff box in the 1800s would be loaded up with the story of like Adam and Eve or something. Like everything's loaded up with story and imagery and allegory back in like the Baroque period. And I think we're in a new period where like all gestures are pointing to some sort of implied meaning. And how do you kind of talk about that?
You know, it's so funny. I mean, because I was going to ask you a question related right to that. Just in regard to you know, because I think like the Da Vinci Code, the movie Da Vinci Code, really like ruins the way a regular person interacts with a painting because they're constantly searching for not just a meaning internal to like the syntactic painting system inside, but they're looking for a meaning pointing outside of the painting, like into the real world.
Yeah.
But you know, there's this kind of excess of symbols, right? This excess of meaning, and you know, once I saw the imagery online, something really clicked with me. With I guess there's like a project to your practice, right? And the project seems to be like it's sort of like this convergence of like a maximalist gesture and a minimalist gesture pointing somehow to the same kind of experience. Like the too muchness or too littleness points to the same experience. Like if you divide by infinity or zero, you get the same results.
Yes, totally. Exactly.
And I guess I want you to talk about that, like in terms of like the feeling of like, I guess there's a feeling to the subject you're talking about being like barraged by these symbols.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's this question of when you're barraged by symbols, does that then obliterate meaning entirely? I mean, something I also was thinking about just now when you were asking that question was how, like with the Da Vinci Code thing, I mean, like how when you go on the internet, I don't know, sometimes I'll see stuff where it's like, you know, is this, I don't know, just like things where people are making such crazy jumps, like the way
Yeah.
conspiracy theories have become so mainstream and they're a joke, but they're not, but they
Yeah.
are. And I saw a comment once that underneath this like post that was saying some like insane thing, some insane conspiracy theory-esque thing, and someone just goes, "Is everyone just schizophrenic now?" And like that is how it feels. Like it
Yep.
does feel like everyone's schizophrenic now. And I think that loss of a consensus in language creates actually a type of lack of language because everything is there's so many ways to understand that everything becomes a misunderstanding. And so, yeah, I am really looking for this point where maximalism kind of brings about this like sense of obliteration. Like, how could you possibly look at one of these images and come away and be like, that's definitely what it's about?
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of perfectly ties a bit with how you speak about like how in today there's hyper-specific language. And, you know, also obviously this has been shifted because of technology too and social media. So I was wondering if you can like speak a bit like, you know, and introduce this topic of hyper-specific language.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I found this book, I guess back in like 2019, that was about all the different dialects as you moved throughout the East Coast. And it was, I mean, it was a book from like the 1800s. So it was a book really breaking it down, but it like kind of mapped out in a physical sense of like when you go to New Hampshire, it's like this. And then when you go a little bit north of New Hampshire, it's like this. And then when you go to the east of New Hampshire, it's like this. And it really was like language was so like me and my next door neighbor would talk the same way. But now you have a situation where it's like me and everyone on this K-pop subreddit, you know, all have this shorthand that I might not have, you know, I don't have K-pop subreddit shorthand, you know, or like I'm on the Fundy Snark subreddit, which what do any of you guys even know what that means? I mean, it's like
Absolutely
speaking
not.
gibberish. You know, it's fun. It's like these fundamentalist Christian couples that like have like 11 kids that they like keep in a bus and homeschool. And it's like this page that critiques them. But there's this whole rhetoric to the fundy snark subreddit, just as one example of millions and millions and millions of subreddits and subcultures. And you can have a situation now where there's someone in New York having the exact same linguistic shorthand as someone in, South Korea, in Oklahoma, like anywhere in the world, you can be on the same in the same subculture as someone. And then you can go to your neighbor, someone who's next door to you, someone who's grown up in the exact same place, and be like, hey, like, what do you think of like Tom and Megan and this blah blah blah? And people are like, what are you talking about? Like you are like, there are all these infinitesimally small language groups happening and cropping up all over the place. And it's made it so that like language is super globalized, but also hyper specific. It's like you can be provincialized across continents. And like that has never happened before. You never before in history could you go to China and find someone who's like totally knows what the fuck you're talking about and not be able to find that person immediately around you. And so I think like that to me is really interesting, like how the way that language went from being purely geographic to completely losing all geographic borders entirely.
Is there a language subculture that you relate to?
I think I'm not like interested in relating to things necessarily more than I am looking under the hood and figuring out how they work. Like I knew someone a long time ago who ran a bunch of meme pages, like really pretty well-known meme pages. And it was interesting to figure like kind of I didn't totally understand memes until I met this person, and they kind of were describing a lot of like, it was like the memes are very like incel culture memes, like this idea of like a green line. And if you're standing like it would be like analyzing photos and then putting green lines over each person and seeing who was standing up straight versus tilting in as a way of like unpacking power within photo. It was like bizarre. Like this is what I mean by like everyone's schizophrenic. I don't relate to that. I'm not looking at photos and being like, who is the power leader in this photo? But I am like, whoa, this is super crazy. And also just the edge, again, walking that edge of irony and sincerity. Like this person was very they were, when you are making all these, you take a photo with them, they're standing straight up. And so it's for me, it's less about what I'm relating to in my own life and more what I'm like looking specifically at. I mean, I was talking to Jacques actually, who works here at the gallery recently, and I described this like idea of misdirect, like this linguistic misdirect in the paintings as like when Beyonce made that song called America Has a Problem, but then it's just about her ass. Like it's just about being sexy. Like it's this kind of thing where you think it's going to be about one thing and it's just a total left turn. And yeah, and using like in that Beyonce example, like Beyonce is using language to make you think she's going to make this song where she's like totally critiquing America. And then you listen to the song and she's just like, I'm sexy. Do you know what I mean?
Sedrick, do you have anything to add on the memes? FYI, Sedrick is the king of memes. So
King of memes.
Oh, are you gonna put me on the spot? Well, because I kind of see memes as like, on the one hand, they're like I'll send video clips basically to Ginevra and Liv. I'll harass them at whatever hour. I have no scruple about it. But like, I was thinking like kind of critically about it. But what that gesture is like, like on the one hand, it's a shorthand for a very emphatic emotion and reaction, like that kind of goes beyond words. But on the other hand, I think it can be kind of symptomatic of like feeling overwhelmed to express things in your own words as well. There's like a passivity to like react, like for like just going through like a tab of memes and this goes to this person for a situation. And even what I find really interesting, like there's something you brought up, Liv, where there's something in language that offers this kind of like endless signification, like like looking at like following the QAnon trend from several years ago, like, people were fucking like really showing up like Harvard, Yale literary PhDs with the way they were reading those Q drops. Like they were really like mining all this information out of them. And when I send these memes, to you guys, I think, well, in a weird way, there's an arbitrariness to them as well, because I could actually react with like 40 others. Um, so like they kind of present as this hyper specific thing, but then that arbitrariness is actually like actually the main thing signifying. And I guess I kind of I guess I kind of connect that to while there is all of these I guess online cultures, subcultures like emerging within the world, like I think very socially, we're also experiencing like the collective ruination of ritual, kinship, belonging, like it's like the main thing that's happening on a larger scale through this exchange is like we're just losing the sense of collective belonging, which is not a question, but it is actively something I think about throughout.
I have a lot of thoughts about that. I mean, I think we talk about this a lot, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there is something interesting about also how in language we've never communicated with this many just images before. Like we have
Mhm.
so many images to choose from to then communicate for us instead of using words.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot about, you know what? I wish I'd added this to the PowerPoint,
Slides.
that meme I sent you. Remember I sent you that meme that was like the guy with the big head, and I thought it was just really funny. And then you were like, no, this
Oh
has
yeah.
all this like deep religious like background to it that you're
Yeah.
totally missing out on. And like you could like this idea that I could be communicating out in a meme that I just think, oh, this guy has a funny shaped head, but I'm actually communicating out this like long lineage of like religious subculture.
And
And so I think that also happen, like these types of misunderstandings happen in the
yeah.
like on the internet, where I can accidentally be completely missing the point
Yeah.
of an image or this like overarching theme of an image, but then I could choose that and use it to communicate out. And so it's like these
Hmm.
images can have really kind of like deep, and I think that that kind of functions in the same way art does. Like you can look at a,
Hmm.
you know, you can look at a painting and really appreciate it for all sorts of different things that are aside from what the point was. I mean, Bridget Riley has this great text
Hmm.
where she goes through all these old masters paintings and kind of breaks down like the uses of like blue, and she's like talking about it as if it's like a Bridget Riley painting, but it's like an old, Piero della Francesca.
Hmm. Yeah. When you sent me that, I think it was like a Yakub meme. It was like a real, like a very like conspirator, like the image originates from a very conspiratorial like fringe religion within Black communities. And my relationship to it is, I think my father joined this group for about 2 weeks, and he left because he was like, they're kind of like racist, like against white people, and he just left. And so it was this hyper specific thing that I experienced, and then there was this kind of like what's the word? There was this kind of uncanniness to saying, you very much not like a Black man within a marginal religious subculture, like saying this thing back to me. I was like, what in the actual fuck is going on? And
Right.
it just kind of speaks to, I guess, what you're talking about, I guess, which is like this schizo-reactive cross-pollination of symbols, right?
Yeah.
And you know, but like dialing back up a few layers up, I just realized, kind of going through all of these images, like I feel like you've got a new lead singer with your palette, and it's like initially I was gonna say you use yellow a lot, but I noticed there's a lot of red.
I know.
Um,
I noticed that too when I was
yeah.
making the work. I noticed that shift. I don't know how or why it happened, but it just, and I went back.
Yeah.
When I noticed this, I looked back at like all the older work, and I was like, there's like barely any red in these paintings
It happened
before
after the Borderline show,
2025.
I think.
It
Yeah.
just moved. I don't know. But yeah, I also noticed that. And now I'm looking for a new lead singer. I'm like, who's my new lead singer?
Your Evanescence.
But you know what I was thinking when you guys were drawing these like references to like how people associate like images and context, right? What do you think about how people read images like in the past? So obviously like iconography at the time, like religious
Mm,
iconography was like a thing. And like today we have our own iconography, which is more dispersed. But I wonder, I mean, you also in a way live like draw some like the hodler like collage you
mm.
made. I love that work so much. Maybe we can pull it
Pull it
up,
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
to speak about it. So that in a way is very charged. It is almost iconographical, like it's context and everything. But for someone
See,
today, it could just be a
No, keep
woman,
going down. Sorry.
no worries, dancing.
It's
So
it's at
yes,
the
how do
very
you
end. Yeah,
feel
that
about
last one.
that?
No, not that one. The two up. Okay, there we go.
yeah,
Sorry. This is the image we've been talking about.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, this is like supercharged. I love Hodler. And I thought it was funny inverting the painting and with because it's I mean it's obviously it's the reference for the Sound of Music also, where she's in the Swiss Alps. But then turning it into like fire and brimstone.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this sometimes. This is a really good question, Ginevra. I think about this sometimes is the way we think about the understanding of history because the narrowing down that history has that has happened to history. Because when I think about the past, I'm like, oh, I feel like there was more of a universal understanding, at least from a Western perspective. There was more of a universal understanding of like symbols and forms. Like a lot of it was about stories from the Bible, stories of like political, hierarchies or dynasties or whatever. Like there was more cohesion in the imagery, but maybe that's also just the imagery that stuck around after 1,000 years. Like maybe that's the only
Mm.
things we've kept. So it's a little hard for me to say. But I do think there is a sense of I mean, I think that this like idea of any subculture that might have been that was like purely geographic being wide like globalized, I do think that that is something distinctly new.
Hmm.
Um, and
Hmm.
creates like a weird cultural clash, or it creates these kind of like weird connections. But yeah, I think I do try to assume, I generally assume that there was more of a monoculture
You
previously.
know, it seems like we've been circling this. It's like there's like Baudrillard simulation theory, which has to do with just being like the image winning out. But it seems like we've been circling in the work like this dialectic between that kind of like simulation being thrown in simulation, but also iconoclasm, which is like the distrust, reactive destruction of the image, the prohibition of the image. Um, and I think like there's something really there's something really kind of compelling to me about the way you can just kind of like feel that and like in the work like as this like kind of process playing out. And then but then I think to me the thing that makes the most sense is when I see the collages and the way that it interacts with that, because that seems like idea space, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
I'm wondering how, and I see like it becomes a space, it becomes a subject, it becomes a theme, or at least I think so. And I guess I wonder how I guess how collage interacts with the work in terms of like subject, theme, material, idea.
I think the collage felt like a really new element. I mean, I previously may have, I mean, would get together with friends and make collages and
Mhm.
stuff. But I think this idea of my own collaging is something that started like a year ago. The tiny paintings started like 5 years ago, but I think the collage element, I don't know, one day I just was like, okay, I'm gonna make some collages, and I went and got some books. But I mean, I
Mhm.
have a ton of books in my studio and I'm looking at them constantly and looking at our history. And so the references and a lot of the collage pieces that came into the first few collages that I made that ended up being in the show, like this one and the one that's in the back room, the tiny one in the background room with the two-headed guy. That they should all be at like the end of the slideshow. Where's the, up a little bit, maybe? It doesn't matter, whatever. So maybe we could just stream through some of the last few that we have in the slideshow. Well, this one is one of the later collages, but this was once I was like, oh, I kind of unlocked collage, and you told me to get a printer, which I then did.
Yeah.
And it is the reason all these collages came into the show. You know, sometimes like jumps in the work can be had by just a friend being like, you need to get a printer.
Printers are great.
But I think I showed you some of the collages I was making, and you were like, you should print more stuff out. And so then I started printing out the material I was using like directly in the paintings, like these bodies, and cutting them out and kind of forcing the perspective and doing weird things to them, which then unlocked this whole new thing in the work. But anyway, the original collages, the first few that I was thinking about, I mean, I think I'm constantly looking at art history images. And so I think that that is where things came from, like a really natural place. But I also think the bigger paintings, they are collage. I'm kind of throwing on my projector and sifting through images on my computer onto a canvas that I'm like working on, and kind of seeing what kind of shape works within the composition from this archive I hold. Like I have this huge archive of images, mostly from archives of people who are like coming into language, like kind of early language archives, like Rhoda Kellogg, who studied young children as they're like learning language, and then Ferdinand Delagnay, who studied nonverbal autistic children. And now I'm collecting a lot of images of like really old cave paintings and like really early, before we have like language in the sense of right now, but like images from like 30,000 years ago. And I'm like, well, what did that kind of, how did that gesture then evolve into a language? There's actually this really interesting writer, I forget his name, but he was like an early archaeologist researcher who researched like physically how like not having to use our mouth to hold things, like once our hands could hold things, we could then make gesture, and like how that affected all of language thereafter. So I think that's kind of the stuff I'm like really looking for in terms of the archive, but the archive also has other things, which is like images that just like really struck me for some reason, things I see in passing, art historical references that I love. So it's really a mix, and I think the work speaks to collage a lot, whether it is an actual physical collage of like a cutout and pasted thing, or just these images, these like totally disparate images coming together in this collaged way. But I don't even remember exactly what your question is, but I definitely think collage has become really important in the work in a way that I never expected.
And this work specifically, like another, let's say, thing that I noticed recurrent in your work is also like repetition. And in this case, you can see it like repetition, patterns, this kind of like almost textile quality to the work. Like, how would, I don't know, do you see that? Is it something you're thinking about?
Absolutely. And that's actually where my idea for the circular bases comes from, because there is this repetition of circles in all the paintings. I think that that's something really natural that happens in the process of making the paintings. I'm making one painting and then I'm like, oh, this move like works so well. I wonder where else I can put it. This color, I've mixed up this big batch of color. I mean, one thing I was joking about with myself with the red is I'm like, maybe there's so much red in the paintings because I squeezed out a bunch of red, and then I'm like, gotta use it because that cadmium is not cheap.
That's real. That's really real. Yeah, I feel that.
But so I think a lot of it comes from just like the way I'm making them. I don't make them one at a time. I have 5 paintings open like not open simultaneously. I'm like talking in computer language. On my wall, you know, I'm like in the room, and then I'm kind of bouncing between them and and then I'm drawing, and then I'm taking a drawing and I'm saying, oh, this drawing, like, where can this drawing fit? And I'm kind of, and again, like this recycling of the archive and how I project it up, I sort through them all. I would go through the whole same batch. And so that's where you get forms that like totally reoccur. I was thinking about the reason I asked you to put in this, that image, that extra painting. Can we move to that? Yeah. The reason I asked you to put this one in, because I felt like when I made this, it was a real off, like one-off. I mean, I made it half, it's like a very one-to-one description of a drawing I made. But then I was thinking about this show and I was like, one, there's red in this painting, which is really different from a lot of the other work. And also these circles then evolved to the red body with the circles on it. Can we go to that one? Oh, and wait, the one right above it, the one right above it. So this one was the first collage one. I tried to make a tiny version of that other painting we just looked at, and
Yeah.
I didn't work. I set it aside for like a year or two. And then that's where this collage came from. And then I want to move to the one with the holes. So there is, no, not that one. It's one of the freestanding paintings. It's a red body. It almost like looks like a corpse or something. No, nope, not that, not that. Eight. There we go. And then I kind of saw this connection between that older painting that we were just looking at and then this painting, even though they feel really, really disparate. Sometimes what will happen when I'm in the studio is I'll see these older things that I've put aside, maybe that went into the world and I only have a picture of them, whatever. And then like new elements or previous elements will then transform into something new. And then that's kind of what keeps the work rolling. Like I feel like I could make a lineage of grandfather painting, dad painting, son painting from all these different paintings over the years. And you would be really confused or like surprised to see, like you would never really look at this painting and then think about the other two we just looked at. But I do feel like there is like a lineage and repetition in them. And that comes from just the process of how I'm physically going about making things and organizing myself in the studio.
Yeah. Um, kind of kind of in relation to that, but kind of from the opposite axis, right? Like, do you have any limitations? Like, are there like things that you won't do, like you have as a hard no, as like as a move or a painting decision, or formally or thematically? How does
That's a
that?
really good question. I
Yeah,
mean,
how
it
does that shape
used
the
to
decision making?
be, I used to have a really, really hard no against bodies and people. And I was
I
like,
know.
I like, yeah, you know this. I was like, I think you shouldn't be allowed to paint women. Like, I think women should be like Allah, and you shouldn't be allowed to paint them. So this show feels like I'm like, who am I? I mean, not who am I? I'm like, oh, this is so me, but I'm like, but I had and words. I also was something that I really, really just been thinking about for like 10 years. This idea of like words in a painting. Like I just feel like I've been grappling with the corniness of that.
Yeah.
And the gold leaf is another one where I feel like that was a real rule I broke for myself. And and yeah, so I feel like I do have these things and then I kind of go and break them. I do think collage in terms of like sticking stuff onto the painting, like that's something Chris Martin is so fucking good at. Like
Yeah.
Chris Martin, also glitter. Chris Martin, amazing glitterist. This man
Agreed.
is like, I'm like, I would love to be able to be that good at doing that, but I can't do it in a way that like not yet, not in a way that doesn't look so stupid and corny. Like
Mhm.
gluing a thing onto the actual big painting, that feels like something that feels very taboo for me right now. I think scenery, I think this idea of like a really cohesive scene feels a bit taboo to me.
Mhm.
I don't know.
It-
There's a lot of stuff if I really broke it down.
you
But
know,
I do
it's
think those things that you are obsessed with in a I hate it way, but I also love it. Like you kind of develop these fixations as a painter that you're like, oh, this is the most disgusting thing in the world. But then, maybe you find yourself doing that.
yeah, there's an intensity to that, and I kind of like phrase it in a way because I thought that there's something very revealing about these two sides to you, what you're reacting to with, like, you just feel it in the installation itself, right?
Yeah.
So is that kind of happy? Because in a weird way, like this is almost like it's repression acting itself out. Like you repress it, you repress it, you repress it, and then it exceeds itself and it comes
And
out.
there's nothing more repressed than a minimalist painting.
Absolutely.
That is
We love
the
it though.
most repressed you can really
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. Ginevra, do you have a question?
No, I was just wondering, and what about, was like the digital, like a restriction of yours? Like I'm seeing like digital references. For example, some of your works more than others have these kind of surfaces, like the glitch, um, like, digital kind of like language. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think that's also the digital, like in a post-internet sense, has become super corny in art. And so that's like another really corny thing. But I don't know. I mean, I think computers, it's like I look at the computer for like sometimes I go to sleep and I dream that I am playing like a computer game.
Oh God.
I know it's fucked up. Like
Yeah.
I dream and I'm like looking at my phone in a dream. It's awful. It's horrible. But I'm like, computers, I am cyborg. Like we are cyborgs. Like there's no going back.
No, no, no.
And so I just think computers have become so ingrained in our lives. It's like, how can they not work their way into the images one way or another? Whether that's the nostalgia of a computer, of the like little black dots,
Mhm,
or the idea of collage, which is kind of
mhm.
how we experience a computer screen, which is a collage of all these different windows and images kind of rolling through the screen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's kind of unavoidable because it's like the gaze we look at the world through.
Yeah,
Like probably these paintings could be presented in a kind of pre-internet context, and their associations would kind of divert elsewhere. But
it could be completely different.
yeah, but like as you said initially, right? Like it is impossible to make this kind of minimalist painting because our relationship to it is as an image,
Yeah.
and as a referential point in history.
And that's so
Um,
many historical things is like
yeah,
we only reference them through image.
yeah,
Like think about how many paintings you've never seen in real life, but you know of because you've looked at
yeah,
an image of them like 100 times.
yeah.
That was
Sure.
kind of crazy to me when I saw the circa 1995 show this summer at Zwirner. So
Yeah.
many of those paintings, I was like, oh, it's almost creepy. I mean, that show was incredible, but like it was almost creepy to walk through because I'd seen images of those paintings hundreds of times. And then finally getting to see them, it was like seeing a celebrity or something. Like I felt like I was like
I was gonna
seeing
say, yeah,
Miley Cyrus. Like I
yeah,
was like it was like seeing a celebrity in real life. But it was like this weird relationship I don't think people have ever really had up until now, where you could go on your phone and you could look up Laura Owen's 1995 painting of buildings, look at it, then you can go look at it in her monograph, then you could go look at it in this thing, and then you could, you know what I mean? And then finally you get to experience it, or like people are like, I've only seen your work on Instagram. I've only seen your work in
yeah,
images. And then you can go and experience it in real life. But
yeah.
that like pre-experience of it that's different, but still you're experiencing it. That like that it's like disconnected. I mean, it is Baudrillard. It's this kind of disconnection of the thing itself and your image or idea of the thing. It's a flattening of the idea and iconographizing it, if that's a word. And
It
I
is
think
now.
that's also how we experience art. I mean, that's how we experience everything
Yeah.
now, is like through the phone first, and then you go see it.
Mm,
You go get an ad on Instagram, and then you're like, I want to go see that.
kill me now.
Right.
Um, so real quick, wanted to ask and kind of and that like I totally couldn't agree more of that. Like, but I guess I'm wondering, like, as a painter, right? Like, when you make decisions, are you like a kind of like a glass half empty painter, or like a glass half full, right? Like, I think I was talking to Blair once about this because he says that he jams out on like what he thinks is the best area of the painting kind of explodes that. And then I was
Wait,
like,
say
for
it
me,
again.
I
Sorry,
look at
say it again. He what? He jams up what?
he figures out what he thinks is the best component of the painting, and he
Mm-hmm.
dials that to 11. Like he like explodes that
Oh, okay.
moment and makes it the thing. And I was like, for me, I look at all the things I hate and try to make them the best over and over until there's something I don't hate anymore. And
Yeah.
and I thought that was a difference between like looking at things kind of in a negative way or a positive way. So that's my way of saying glass half empty reactions or glass half full.
I feel like actually this is, and I feel like maybe you know this about me already, but I feel like
Yep, leading question.
when there's a painting that one part works and other parts aren't, it's actually that's when the painting explodes. Like I think when I remember there was a painting that I was making this summer-ish, no, like spring, that like had this pattern shape, and you were like, that shape looks like a bowl. Remember
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
And I was like, fuck, that was the only part of the painting that I liked. And I was trying so hard to make it work. And then I was like, I just need to explode the whole painting. And sometimes when you explode the whole painting, it goes in the trash. And sometimes it works and it like opens something up. But I feel like when I get to that point, I don't know whether that's a empty or full part, but when you get to the
Yeah.
point where like the painting, we can go back to the one with the circles, the red person with the circles in them. This one, so I had this beautiful background that I loved.
Mm.
And then I had this figure in it. And the figure was perfect, beautifully painted. Oh, so perfect. And I was stuck because I was like, it's it's not done. It's not enough. It's not ready. But these two parts are so perfect. I don't want to disrupt them. And then I got to a point where I was like, all right, this shit is not going to be in the fucking show if you don't do something to it. And that was when I just threw red on the whole body and was like, well, I have this perfectly painted body and it's time to just completely get rid of it. And it was like, once I threw away the whole painting, I was really able to like, for some reason, get it. It's just, it's something that happens with every painting. I don't know why. It's like every single time I'm like, I get to this point where I'm like, oh, it's almost perfect. It's like the most repressed thing you could possibly do almost. It's like I get to this point where I'm almost so happy with it. And then I completely, and when I do make the painting, when I'm like, I make the painting and it's like the whole time, I'm like, it's going so good. Oh, it's looking so good. And then I finish it without like fucking it up. I get immediately
Yeah.
bored. I get bored with it after 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I look back on the paintings and I'm like, those are the worst paintings. Those are my
Yeah.
least favorites.
At this point, when I you ask me that, I wonder if like if the next time I look at my phone and the message from you, if it's just going to be like this sacrifice ritual and things
No, it's
obliterated.
literally a sacrificial ritual. I send it to you. I send it to probably Kate and Riley. And
Yeah.
then and that is when the painting is about to be explode.
Yeah.
That's the moment of explosion.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I'm asking for approval and then completely negating anything anyone says to me and then immediately exploding.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something I think this is something more less about you working and more about your I guess navigation of the scene, the ecosystem. Because I know you like to see like everything, right?
I see everything.
Um, and for me personally, if I see more than two things, that's it. I'm like checked out beyond that point. I need to like sit down for a bit. And it's really important to you. I know it's really important to you to just
Yeah.
see it. And if you talk about that.
I am a crazy art looker at her. I've
Yep.
always been this way. I think it comes from a couple things. I think one, it comes from when I got to college at Cooper, everyone was like, you don't know who Paul Tech is? And I was like, no. So I was like, I gotta go figure out what everyone's talking about. But then I
Yeah.
think also I was having this experience when I was like early and young and like learning about all these artists. I would see them on Instagram and then I would go to their show and I would have a completely different like experience of the work. And I was like, and actually it's funny, Adam Alessi, when he came to the show, he was like, I thought for some reason all the paintings, the freestanding paintings were like 2 feet tall. And I was like, oh, that's
What?
so weird.
Yeah.
But so I'm like, for one, I have to see everything in person because I need to like really know what it feels and looks like
Yeah.
in order to really understand this artist.
Yeah.
Two, there's nothing better than seeing an artist show and being like, I can look at, I can think about this show that I saw in 2017. Then I can think about their 2019 show. Now I can
Mm.
look at their 2022 show and I can like look at
Mhm.
this whole trajectory and like really get a better understanding for how they're changing and growing. And then three, it's also like there's some shows you'll see and you'll be like, oh, that totally changed everything. Like everyone saw the 2016 Carrie Marshall show at the Met Breuer, which traveled around.
Mm.
Everyone, and that like I feel like totally influenced a whole generation of painters.
Completely
Um,
agreed.
and I think that the Kai Althoff painting 2019 at Tramps, or was
Yep.
it 2018? Also
Around
totally
then.
influenced a generation of painters. Interestingly, his 2017 MoMA show did not influence a generation, but the 2019 Tramp show, I feel like everyone suddenly locked in on him. And so you can also
Mm.
see these transformations in not only what the artist is thinking about, but what all artists are thinking about. Like, and
Mhm.
instead of waking up one day and being like, why does everything look like a Kai Althoff painting? You're like, everything looks like a Kai Althoff painting because of that Kai Althoff show.
Yeah.
And even though there's a painting show happening sometime soon that everyone is going to look at, and in 5 years, we're going to be like, oh, that show was why everything looks that way now.
Yeah.
We don't know, but when we go around and see all those shows, it's good to see it and then just like know when it happens.
Yeah.
Or
You're
like
kind of
you're
like a
like, well, at least I was there, so I know what the
yeah.
hype is about.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such an interesting thing to say because you're kind of like it's just like a trauma theory of culture, like something like startles and upsets the system and then changes the behavior of aesthetics from that point.
Yes.
And you're like the storm chaser of it, right? You're like witnessing it.
Yeah, I'm trying
Like
to
you witness
witness
the
it in
moment
real
where it
time.
happens. Interesting.
Because then I
Interesting.
think you can more easily look at what's happening and figure out what feels like a passive trend and what feels real and like, like different. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it makes it easier to identify difference versus trend or something. Like I feel like it just makes it easier to like really, but I mean there's also certain painters who there's this one painter who I feel like I always kind of neglected the work and was like,
Hmm.
not for me, it feels like a trend, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw his show in the spring and I was like, this person's a genius. And I
Mm.
don't know, it's just for some reason, maybe without all the noise around them, I was more able to appreciate the work. Or, I mean, I think it was also my first time seeing their work in person because I had ignored it for a long time. But
Hmm.
I don't know, you're kind of always just keep staying open to like liking something new or like discovering something new, even if you've seen it before. You can just
Yeah.
always have that like perfect in moment, like in-person experience with a work that like changes your life.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's like you can really see when an artist is making something as a response to the environment that they're living in or as a response of an influence of another person that had
Or in
that
response to an
effect.
image.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too, because I maybe in a different generation this wouldn't like this would be recorded, but the things you're talking about, they probably will be passed over in silence in history, just because if you go from 2018 to 2019, there's just so many other things.
There's so
But
much
like,
happening. There's like 100,000 shows, but
but it's like,
one sticks
yeah,
with people, and it's like
yeah,
never obvious that that's the one or what. I mean, obviously, when
yeah,
I saw the Carrie James Marshall show, I was like, "This is the greatest show I've ever seen." And like 10 years later, I'm like, "That was one of the greatest shows I've ever seen." But you don't. I see a lot of great shows that just pass by like no one no, I don't feel like people are like the Ad Reinhardt show that was paired with the Chris O'Feely show in 2017. I'm thinking about them all the time. I don't know if anyone else is thinking about those shows. I don't feel
hmm,
like people are like talking about the Chris O'Feely show from 2017, the black and white one. But that was an impeccable, amazing, like that show was just as
yeah,
good as the other ones I cited, but some things hit on the zeitgeist and some don't. And it's like I don't know. But it is interesting retrospectively to look at those shows and be like, which ones were the ones that like for some reason everyone latched onto and others they didn't, but they were still really great, you know? I don't know. It's just it's like interesting. It's like an
Yeah.
anthropological mission.
You were talking about the new museum show, the Chris O'Feely show?
No, no, no. I was talking about his Werner show in
Oh, I see.
2017 or 2018. It was an
Yeah,
all
yeah.
black and white show. And he put this fence in the middle. So you
Yeah,
couldn't walk into the middle of the room. So you could only look at the paintings as they're like right here. And they were all black and white. They were it was like
right,
beautiful and incredible. But I don't think that many
right.
people saw it. It like didn't make this crazy splash. I don't totally know why. I think maybe it was a little hard to photograph or something. I mean, it was a long time ago now,
That's
but I
so,
mean, perfect show. And then it was paired with the Ad Reinhardt
yeah,
blue paintings, which was like that was like a moment. I mean, I think about that moment constantly, but I don't think it's not like the Kerry James Marshall show. When you bring it up, people are like, oh, you know. So I don't know, but you got to see everything because otherwise you'll miss
yeah.
these moments and you'll be like, what are you talking about? The 2017 Chris O'Feely show.
That's so funny because you just reminded me when I was in Cooper, I think I was in this trajectory where I was kind of verging towards abstraction. And then I saw the Chris O'Feely show at the New Museum, and then I was like, and then I felt like there was implicit permission to explore pictorial painting and figurative
Yeah.
painting in some
Yeah, your painting was
capacity.
very abstract in college,
Yeah,
remember?
yeah. You're
But I
supposed to
think
forget
there's
that.
still an
Yeah,
abstract grounding in it.
yeah,
Like it's grounded by the principles of abstraction.
yeah, yeah.
Like
But
narrative has been imported into it, but there's still I don't know, it's like both.
missed. But you're right though too, because I have to confess, I actually didn't see that. I didn't see this Warner show, and I've tried to find it online because like very recently. But you know there, there is there is this thing that we do have to wrestle with like images and the way shows are documented,
Yeah.
and the way that they do or don't or alight that kind of network.
Because you can look
Um,
at the image of my show as many times as you want, but you're not going to get that. Like, it's weird. Like, when we set the show up and
mhm,
Jack and Matthew and I were walking through, we were like, oh, this feels crazy. Like, walking through, like, you're in like a city. Like, it felt
yeah,
totally strange. And it was something I could never have anticipated. I'm so glad with how it came out. But,
mhm,
you can't get it through a photo. Like you can look at the photo all day you want all day all long, and you're not gonna like understand what it's like to really be in between these paintings and like you're in this fun house of
yeah.
paintings.
Yeah, especially
Oh,
for your show because it's so
yeah.
installational and physical. I
And then you
mean,
turn around and they're all gone. And they're all red.
You guys are giving me FOMO. I guess I gotta see it before it goes down. I'm in London. Yeah.
you
Uh,
have to. It's like Bernini's like complete works of art. You
hmm,
know, like it's this idea that you're thinking about the space, the architecture, the light. It's not only a painting like hanging on the wall. It's a full experience, you know, and you can't get
Yeah.
it through an image.
yeah. Yeah. True. True. Yeah. All right. I guess I gotta see it. I'll make a way. But all right. The most important question that you've
Okay.
ever been asked in your life. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
When are your cats entering the painting?
Okay, they have.
What?
There was a painting in my Chateau, one of the screens that had a portrait
Yeah.
of my cat in it. It was abstract, but it was a portrait of my cat. But I do actually make a lot of watercolors of them,
Yeah.
and they're gonna make their way in there somehow. I don't know exactly how, but somehow they will make their way into the paintings.
All right. All right. Ginevra, you have a question?
No, I was just saying that on this note of the cats, maybe it's time to ask the public if they have any questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have several questions from the audience, but before I ask them, thank you so much, Olivia, Ginevra, and Sedrick, for this conversation. It's been such a pleasure to listen to. Let me give you some questions if you'll have them. I have several ready to go. The first one is from Alice. Olivia, Alice is wondering what kind of printer you use.
Oh, Epson, maybe? It's like not a like a crazy nice one. I think it was like $300, maybe less. It's it's just a regular printer.
You heard it here first, Alice. And then the next question is from Sam. Sam says, "Hi, Liv. Are there any images in your archive you're protective over, precious about, or nervous about using?"
Nervous or protective of? I don't think so. I mean, I do back up the archive. There's images that I feel like would be hard to find again because I came across them and I like it was very happenstance. But in terms of no, there's no images where I'm like, I don't know if I could use this or like anything that feels like off limits in that sense, or like I'm like, no one can know this image is in the archive. Like, I feel like I want to like one day make the archive into like some type of book or something. I feel very like show my cards.
Thank you so much for that answer. And thank you for that question, Sam. The next question is from Joshua at the Rail. I'll pass Joshua the mic.
Hello, hello. Thank you both so much for that conversation, or all three of you for that conversation. I know you mentioned that someone had mistaken your paintings for being 2 feet tall. Did you always intend for the paintings to be standing at roughly like human size? And
Yes, yeah, I
then
wanted them to be exactly human size.
exactly human size. And then how did you view like the scale and theatricality of their staging in the space in relation to what you were saying earlier on about painting as window or painting as object or painting as subject?
Well, I had this boss who I worked for one time who was this woman that made like these very Bridget Riley-esque paintings. And the whole studio was like N8 gray. And like the windows were blocked out and like, you know, like it was like a color laboratory. Like it was a laboratory, you know. And so she had a show and I was like, okay, so are we going to paint the walls of the show? Are we going to change the light bulbs to like match the light bulbs in the studio? We're going to cover all the windows in the gallery. And she was like, no. And I was like, wait, so we're making this whole laboratory. And then the second the painting for this perfect viewing experience of color. And then the second the painting leaves, you don't care? Like, what? That's crazy. I mean, listen, I can't control how a collector hangs something in their house, but in the parts of showing the painting I can control, I want to make sure that I'm like thinking about what's near the painting. Because when have you ever seen a painting like, okay, like an Ad Reinhardt, they have an Ad Reinhardt at the Whitney in the collection. And like the Ad Reinhardt in the Whitney collection looks nuts because it's with all this other crap on the wall. And it's like an Ad Reinhardt when it's like in this room that feels like a sanctuary versus next to a Rauschenberg sculpture, completely different experience. And so for an artist to like ignore what is happening outside of the frame feels crazy to me. Like this idea that paintings could be treated as this like window, and the window, you could carry it over here and it's still the exact same window. Like to me, that feels nuts. Like that's you know, whatever. I mean, like when you're looking at a, you know, shit, what's his name? The guy who whatever. I can't remember his name right now. But yeah, so I think I want to think about that experience. I'm not like trying to be Katrina Gross, who's like making a huge installation where the paint's like spraying everywhere. But I do want to think about like there is an edge of this painting and like what is the viewer thinking about, or like how is the viewer experiencing the limits of that edge and what's beyond it.
Thank you for that question, Josh, and thank you for that answer, Olivia. We have another anonymous question that came through. When you draw from super specific source material, how important is it to you that viewers are able to understand or access that material directly? Or do you prefer it to function more as a subtle echo within the work, especially when working with super specific sources, as you often do?
I think it doesn't need to be understood. I think it's kind of like you can look at not to go back to memes, but like you can look at the Go Piss Girl meme without having seen Gossip Girl. Like I haven't seen Gossip Girl. I love Go Piss Girl. You don't need, like, I feel like I'm trying to take the source material outside of its original source and kind of situate it in a new place and kind of use it as a means to an end to get to the thing I want to talk about. If you've read Unica Zern, if you're like familiar with the source material, like, you go girl, but like if not, that's fine too. I don't care.
I have a question for you as well. I'm curious about the structure across several of the paintings that looks almost like a book with its pages churning. I really love the way it gets at even the paintings on the wall feeling like objects and referencing objects, but also how it gets at sequencing, how we anticipate receiving information versus how we actually do in real time, the way that things play across time in the studio. And I'm curious how you developed that structure in your studio and then how it has changed as you've continued to paint it.
Yeah, actually, that came from, so there's this amazing David Hockney documentary about a Wang Hui scroll painting from, was it, I think I don't know when it's from, like 1400s, 1600s, that kind of time. And anyway, and in it, David Hockney is talking about the changing how the perspective point shifts as you're unscrolling and moving through the space, and how it kind of is talking about the positionality of the viewer in this very fluid way, and space is kind of and that, like, that positionality, like that flexibility with the positionality of the viewer, allows for the space to be really open-ended and for you to experience time in this very like rolling, expansive way, compared to, you know, the one point perspective where the viewer is like in this spot at this time in this moment. And so I was thinking a lot about this like idea of this expansive time and space and the positionality of the viewer, and like how to kind of talk about that and talk about like that shift in perspective. And then I started thinking a lot about the one point, and like, what if you did have an image that was like hyper one point? I mean, I was going through this phase where I was like trying to mix the two things. And I don't, and that was how I, through all these like I was doing all these kind of like drawings where I was trying to mix these things together and figure out if I could get this like new space, like this like new perspectival space. And it didn't totally work. I don't know, or like it's something I'm still like grappling with, but it did lead to this like book looking situation. But actually something I was thinking about when I was talking to Riley for the text was we were talking about how the positionality of the viewer is no longer related necessarily to what's inside the frame, but it's now about the physical movement of a person through the space. Like it's more installational, like it's more of this like installational experience rather than this idea of like this perspective point implies that you're here versus this perspective point implying that you're here. It's more like the view, I don't know, it's like created this new thing. I don't know, it's something I'm still like grappling with, and like that I think is in the work and will continue to be in the work because it's something I haven't figured out yet. But it did come from these like kind of these progressive experiments in drawing.
Thank you so, so much, Olivia, Sedrick, and Ginevra, for this conversation. And thank you, audience members, for your questions. We're going to conclude today with a reading. Olivia, I'm going to pass you the mic to close us out.
The poem I chose was Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. It's about these travelers and archaeologists discovering the remains of King Ramses II, the Egyptian pharaoh's empire. I met a traveler from an antique land who said two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, the heart that fed. On the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Now look on my works, ye mighty in despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Great. Thank
That
you.
was
Thank everyone so
beautiful.
much.
Thank you so, so much. I'm going to throw open the mic so we can all say hello and goodbye, but thank you for reading that at the conclusion. That was beautiful. And thanks everybody for joining us
Also,
today.
sorry, Louis, I love your paintings. I see that you're on this. I love it so much.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.